Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crossing the Pacific. As you know, I am Kelsey Moser, and this is my co-host Nelson. Today, we wanted to do a live episode just to answer questions. Oh, feedback. Okay. Just to answer questions that people might have about the topic at hand. So, the first topic that we're going to talk about is the player development pipeline in LPL. This one should be kind of a short one, just because I think it's mostly just going to be a Q&A or a quick discussion on kind of how it looks like, what it does, and then we'll move on to talking about LMS coaches and their impact on the LPL sphere. And finally, we will just talk about the top three LPL teams because why not, top three or four. So that's kind of the direction of the show today. So the first question is player development in LPL. We had touched on it very briefly in the last episode with Veteran, where we talked about there's kind of a
Import.
yeah, we talked about imports, but there's a lot more of an extensive layout in terms of the process that players go through to get to the LPL. So I think it's good to start with kind of the scouting ground system that LPL has, which might be a little bit different from the one here. And just your idea of like obviously comparing NA scouting grounds to LPL scouting grounds is a little bit of a
A
is
lot
it,
different, I think.
yeah, exactly. I didn't want to say joke, but go ahead.
At least for NA, like how does the scouting ground work? Like how do
Yeah.
you qualify for scouting grounds? Like how
So
does it work for NA?
so for NA, this might be one of the last year we do scouting grounds. Kind of unclear, but it feels like it's a little outdated or outmoded in the sense of what it's doing. But what scouting grounds more or less is you have top 10 or top 5 players in, excuse me. Wow, I'm really trolling today. Top 4 players in each role on the solo queue ladder who qualify for their position, and they have an opportunity to get coached by the LCS coaches or the representatives that each team sends in groups that are called Mountain, Cloud, Ocean, and Infernal.
Inferno, yeah.
Yes. So these 4 groups then compete. The scouting grounds last for 4 days, about, and then they compete at the end. And after that, there is a draft, which is very similar towards, I would say, more NBA or American sports drafts, which starts from the team with the worst position in the league picks a player that they want to have on an exclusivity window where they decide whether or not to sign that player or not, following the scouting grounds, and then it moves on up the ladder like that. The ninth place team, etc., etc.
Like do they have like definite do they have like first option on a player so that the player cannot like reject or
The player can't reject during the exclusivity window. So if it's the exclusivity window is about a week, where
Mhm.
the team has the kind of period to say, okay, we're trying out this player, we're getting a sense of how this player will work on our team or how that will go within our, our lineup. We'll decide, okay, do some more one-on-one coaching with this player, and then decide whether or not to give them an academy offer or not. Theoretically, the player can say absolutely not, like this is a garbage organization. Why would I join this org? Why did you pick me? I absolutely am not joining this team under any circumstance. But for the most part, it's kind of if the academy team offers you, then you feel incentivized or pressured to do it because if the 7-day exclusivity window ends and you're holding out for another team to pick you up, chances are they no longer have a spot in academy. So
I see, because at least from what I know in NA, like most of the players, even if they go to scouting grounds, they'll have like a pre-contract or like a
yeah,
deal with
so
another team, so it might not matter, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
which is why like this, I feel like the system is very flawed. So
Mhm.
in LPL, how it works, or not LPL, but in China, if I'm not wrong, like if before you can play in the LDL or LPL,
Mhm.
you 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 would have to go through scouting grounds unless you're on the like exception list. So every team in LPL have like 1 to 2 spots every year to put a player on the exception list where they don't have to go through scouting grounds to play professionally. So and then basically every org they can send. I mean, if they want to register like their new players, their new rookies, they have to send their players to the scouting grounds
Mhm.
to get like, I would say like a license or eligibility to play. Basically to get a license to play.
So,
And then
okay.
yeah,
Just to clarify, the orgs are scouting the players first, not the scouting grounds is just picking up players
both.
for. Okay, both. Okay.
It works both ways.
Okay.
And if I'm not wrong, it's like you have to be like top. I don't know the specifics. I think like the top 10 in your
Mhm.
role, or maybe top 20 in your role, or top 15. I think in the super server, like they would give
Mhm.
you like an account in the super server. You have to play on it for like a new account, a fresh account. You have to play on it for like a few weeks, and then the top 20 will get through. Like to qualify, of course, you need to be like hold a certain ranking or certain rating on the different servers.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah, makes sense.
yeah, basically,
So
yeah,
basically, they pick players who are the top in the different servers, and then they give them super server accounts and say, okay, after this period, the top 10 or the top 20 in their role, they get sent to the scouting grounds.
yeah. And the
Okay.
thing is, the scouting grounds over there is a 1 month scouting ground, so it's a boot camp, and
Mm-hmm.
every team has to send a coach to scouting grounds. You, so basically, most of the time they will send like academy coaches, or once in a while like a head coach will go there.
Yep.
I mean, it's all paid for anyway, so like, and you have the coaches will be split up in like different teams. So basically, like each of them will handle a team as well, because there are 20 LPL teams. So I mean, 17. I'm not sure. Basically, every team sends a coach there. They will handle like a team on their own as well. And usually, it's like Aaron from EDG. He'll be like
Mm-hmm.
in charge of the coaches. So usually they will just send like the academy coaches there, so to improve as well.
Okay, makes sense.
So yeah. And
So,
then I think there's like a elimination phase where they'll eliminate like a few players out of the boot camp every few weeks, I think. Of course, the coaches make the decisions. So basically, it's like a voting process between like all the coaches from the teams and Aaron. And I think Aaron himself, not really sure.
mhm.
And then then there's like when you reach the final cut, I think the final few like maybe like 50 to 100 players, there will be I would say like something like a auction, I guess. Basically, yeah, you bid for a players, but the thing is, the money goes to the player. The money goes to the
Okay.
players, and so basically, who bids the highest is going to get the player. I think there's a cap. The cap is like 50K US or something.
Okay.
Not really sure, but if the teams like reach the cap, then of course the players can choose like which team I want to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
to. But obviously, like the players usually go to like the highest bidder.
So basically, they're making a decision right there as to whether or not they want to sign the player. Is the like the 50K you pay the fee and then the player is signed to your org, or how does it work exactly?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
I mean, of course, you pay 50K then,
Then
and
you
if
should, yeah, obviously.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you can just buy it.
Is there a period at the end where the bidding happens, or is it that day,
Yeah,
Like,
it happens like at the end of the boot camp,
okay. But
and
it's
and, and that's
usually
where
okay.
most of the teams they just send their GMs as well, because it's going to be a bidding war.
And Shane Gamers asked, how many trainees will the LPL org usually recruit at each scouting grounds? Is there a cap to the number of players you can bid on,
Uh, as far as I know, there's no cap, but 50K US is a lot.
Yeah.
Like usually there's a budget, and then you try to, if you're a big org, you just try to get like one or two big
Mhm.
signings. Like from what I know is like EDG, they got like the top player, like Xiao Xiao.
Yep.
They
Yeah,
got him for like
yeah.
50K, I think, something like that.
And now he's riding the bench. Sad
I mean,
face.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean
it's
that's
fine.
how it works. Yeah, yeah.
Like most of the money goes to the player,
Mhm.
so it's like kind of a guarantee as well. So I
Mhm.
think it's pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50,000 to the player, and then he's learning, and theoretically, like, there's an angle where he does start. If they feel like
Yeah.
there's a roster configuration that makes sense for him, plus he gets to learn in the environment, and theoretically, DG have some of the best coaches, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's could be way worse for him. he also started all last year too, right? So
Who?
for a lot of last year as well, right? The Xiao.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, half the games.
Yeah, exactly.
He like split time with Audi.
Okay, so and then those players like kind of is there a rule as to what you do with them? Do you have to sign them to the LPL main LPL roster, or do they go to LDL, or is
Yeah,
there a trainee
if I'm not
program?
wrong, you have to put them in LDL.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to put them on the roster of. Basically, you need to offer them a Riot contract. So Riot contracts like LDL, LPL contract. Of course, there is a minimum salary as well. So
Yep.
like that's the basic guarantee you'll get, as a player, like the minimum sum, and of course your salary, which are guaranteed in the LPL.
Yep. So you have clarify again what you mean by guaranteed. It's for a set period of how many months?
It depends how long you sign.
Okay, so for however long you sign, that you're guaranteed to receive the salary over that period. So
Yep.
yeah. So after that, you said there are like 50 players or more at the scouting grounds. So 50 to 100.
No, I mean no. That like at the start of starting grounds, there's gonna be like 100 or 200. So
Okay, yeah, 100 or 200, and then by the end of it, probably only like
like
17.
half or less, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 17 to 20 players get picked up based on what the org is interested in. So
Yeah, at least the top players will get picked up, and the rest which didn't get like any offers. So I mean,
Yep.
so basically, like when like nobody bid for them, you can't really get the
Okay.
license, to play in LDL.
You said you can't or you can?
You can't, you cannot.
Oh, okay. So if no one bids on you,
Yeah,
then you can't even enter LPL. So like
yeah,
a
but
team.
usually there is there will be someone to bid for you.
Okay.
At least like according to my knowledge, that's like roughly how it works.
But let's
So
say
this is like,
okay, go ahead.
yeah. So I think this is like a better way to develop players, because you just force them, like they have to play in LDL, like they have to play at
LDL.
least go through the boot camp, yeah, and play a few games in LDL.
So let's say you're one of the 200, like on the original group, and obviously you don't make it to the final cut of like the 20 or whatever they get bid on. Are you able to then enter LDL? Like, say another team comes back to you and said, actually, we saw you in the initial stages and we were looking at your VODs again and we noticed this, so we thought that maybe you might be an interesting addition to our academy team. And then they're able to assign to the LDL.
It depends. It depends if you have like the one or two spots to give to like random
Oh,
players.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have, then of course you have to wait for the next scouting grounds, which is next. Basically, there's 2 every year, if I'm not wrong. So there's always time.
So you're saying that there's a limited number of 2 slots, right, per team in terms of the scouting grounds? Okay.
Yep.
So you can only choose like 2 players to add to your LDL roster, or
you can only choose 2 players to add to your whichever roster without going through scouting grounds.
Okay, without going through scouting grounds. Got it. Okay, makes sense. So in order to like the scouting grounds player is basically free of that cap, but you can only choose 2 new players to add to your LDL team a year otherwise.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And then there's also the exception, I guess, the exception case where every year or something you get how many players that you can move up to LPL without playing a full season of LDL.
Yeah, I think so as well, but I'm not too sure about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that.
Let's see.
Getting paid 50K per year.
Yeah.
It's not 50K per year.
It's
a one-time salary, like one-time signing on fee.
Yeah, the 50K is a signing bonus, and then you get a salary on top of that. So
and
that's
your salary probably wouldn't be 50K a year.
For the LDL team.
Yeah, it's gonna be like 10, 20K a year.
In LPL in China though, so
yeah, in China. If you're an academy player, that's probably your salary.
Okay, what about What about trainees? Because I know some organizations have like trainee boot camps that they do,
Mhm.
where they're not part of the LDL team, but they're still kind of during a period they're learning from the LPL organization, and they're able to get some competition and some feedback. Like what kind of situations like that do you know of? I know that at least EDG has one. What other organizations have you heard of that have those?
I think most of the organizations they have
Mhm.
those, like at least most of the ones which kind of have money, so or like or are really serious about league. So it's like most of the big teams, I guess, like IG, IGRNG, EDG, definitely they all have youth teams. And yeah, and then if the players are good, then you just send them to scouting grounds. Of course, the players will have like pre-contracts anyway to sign with your
Right.
team.
Hmm.
And the teams will know, like the teams will know, the other teams will know as well. Like if they want to sign your youth player, they're gonna pay a buyout as well.
Okay. Yeah. So they can
So
go
that's
there legally. They can go to the scouting grounds with a buyout attached to their contract.
mm,
Okay.
yeah.
So it'd be kind of like I don't know. EG picks up an amateur player, has to send the amateur player to scouting grounds, but everyone knows that amateur player is tied to EG.
Hmm.
So if you want to sign him, you're going to have to pay the buyout fee on top of the initial signing bonus on top of the player salary. So
Yeah, there probably wouldn't be a signing bonus because everyone knows that
okay.
how much it's worth. So
Oh, so he just goes
yeah,
to the team. Okay,
yeah.
interesting. Then let's see. Okay, so what is the kind of typical format of the youth teams? Is it just a team that competes like in an amateur circuit below LDL for the full year, or what do those typically look like?
As far as I know, there's no amateur circuit. There are
Hmm.
like third party, third
Yep.
party tournaments,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
you need permission from Riot to participate in
Yep.
those, and they're not very like they don't really happen often. Maybe it's like once a year or so.
Okay.
But yeah, most of the time it's like you just grind Korean solo queue. You play scrims maybe
Hmm.
once twice a week, a few times a week.
Hmm.
But most of the time it's just like solo queue.
And then feedback from coaching staff, or
Yep.
yep.
And then feedback from coaching staff, and probably those which like have the highest ranking, like
Hmm.
highest rating on solo queue get pushed up to LDL if your team has a like empty spot,
Hmm.
to register him.
And as far as
And
I
then
know, there isn't really an age cap or anything like that on
yeah, there's no
yeah,
age cap.
yeah.
I think there's a import cap where you can only have one import, but yeah.
Mhm. There's only one import as like a youth player, or only one import as an LDL
Oh,
player.
as a LDL player.
Okay. That means also that there's no age cap on LDL either.
Yeah, there's no age cap,
Okay.
but everyone has an age cap in their mind, in China. So
Or I guess not age cap, but age minimum. Like you don't have to be a certain
oh,
age to compete in
I,
LDL.
yeah, there was a 15-year-old on the
Okay,
MO.
15.
So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
like the rank 1 player, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Uh, all right. So that's kind of like the extent of it. So let's say you have your players in LDL. Um, Under what circumstances can you promote them to LPL?
As long as, if I'm not wrong, there's a window where you can move them up. So I think it's like before the first half of the split ends, I think.
Okay.
I'm not really sure right now. But there is or
Hmm.
maybe like 1 month before playoffs, you can move your players up to
So
the LPL roster.
so probably similar to NA. There's a window
Yeah,
like a transfer period. Actually, in NA you can
actually,
move players
NA doesn't.
between
Yeah,
you can move players between Academy and LCS at any time, but for signing new players you can't.
yeah.
Uh,
But
yeah.
for LPL, there's like a 1 or 2 week,
Hmm.
you know, grace period where he is moving between LDL and LPL, so you can't like move it. Like you can't adjust your roster similarly to LCS.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say you're a new organization. We haven't had one of those for a while. We
I
haven't,
mean, there are. In
but
LDL, there are.
in LD, in LDL they'll be in the works. Okay, so let's say that you're a new organization to LDL, and you want to sign a new roster, right? What are the rules on signing that roster? Is it just you can sign whatever players you want to LDL for the first round, or
No, that you can only sign registered players. So
registered player? Okay, so
yeah, but usually like if you're a new LDL team, then you would have probably bought a slot from someone else. So
so you have some
there would be no
existing
yeah.
players. Okay.
You would have some existing players, and then you just have to sign them. So
Hmm. So basically, you have to. This also kind of ensures that if you sign a player to the LDL roster, they stay. You have to at least have some players that stay on for multiple years because you can only sign new registered players to LDL like 2 a year, right?
yeah, like new as in not registered, like not
Yeah.
registered under like the LPL
Hmm.
LDL like list of players.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. So you can only
But
register 2 new players a year, but you can take registered
but
players from other teams, right?
yeah,
Okay.
but of course it doesn't like the players who went through scouting grounds are considered registered. So
Right. Okay. So you can start a completely new roster from scouting grounds, basically.
yep,
Okay.
like you can get 5 players who are in scouting grounds.
Hmm. Makes sense. Okay. That was one thing that I wanted to clarify. Because I've definitely seen like pretty high player turnover in LDL, so I just wanted to clarify that part. I think
I mean,
the
I think LDL like of course there are like so many new players, so
Mhm,
teams would usually like to
yep.
get the better players if you're and sell them if they don't need them or if they're not in LPL.
Hmm.
And I mean, if and most of the players like they get rotated around anyway. Like the kind of younger players, like if you're below 20, 21, they kind of get rotated around different teams anyway. It's just that they change name every time, so you wouldn't notice.
And I'm probably like to my knowledge, there is kind of more amateur events. But you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
I also don't think like. Do you have any thoughts on? Uh, because I also know City of Heroes exists. As far
yeah.
like that still
I,
exists.
I'm not sure if it's called City of Heroes because I
Hmm.
went to those events as well
It's
because
like
basically they
mhm.
have like the events in the LPL stadiums. Like I went
it's
to
it's
one as
like
well as
it's like TGA,
like
right?
yeah,
Uh,
it's similar to TGA.
yeah. So it's
Basically like they
mhm.
play for their own region. So region is like maybe you're in Shanghai, so it's like
Yep.
the Shanghai region, stuff like that. And the best teams will go to like the finals. And I think the winner will go to
Hmm.
the Master Cup or something. Yeah, they
Yeah,
play the
yeah,
Master Cup
yeah. Mhm.
or NEST. I don't really recall, but yeah, but that's how it works.
Yeah, there was one
And,
at NEST, and then there was also one. I think they had like a team from Scouting Grounds, or like the Scouting Grounds winning team, and
yeah,
then they had the team from TGA, and then they had a team from Collegiate, as well
yeah.
as like the. I think there was one more, but I can't remember. But there
Oh,
were
there
a
was a
streaming
there
team,
was a yeah
streaming team.
there was a
Yeah,
streamer team.
yeah.
That
Okay.
that was like the Delta Force.
Yeah, so there's collegiate in China and there's also TGA, which is more
Yeah.
like you break China down into separate regions. So it's kind of like the ERLs
Yep.
in Europe, where you break their separate Chinese regions, and those players compete within the region, and then they go to the eventual like main TGA tournament. Is how it, and then
Yep. That,
yep, the winner of that has an opportunity. So that's kind of like equivalent of ERLs or the amateur circuit in NA, but it's very rare for the, I guess, youth camps, or not the youth camps, the youth teams for LPL to compete in those TGA tournaments, right? They can't really do that.
yeah, they can't.
Okay.
I didn't. I think they can't. They can't.
Yeah. So basically, the
Uh,
trade-off. Oh, go ahead.
unless they like go through like with a different name. But usually that wouldn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Because I mean the teams would want like their name to be out there anyway.
Yep.
But like, I think there's a system in China. Like if I have to use like Western terms
Mhm.
to describe it, it's like basically amateur scene is similar to like ERLs. It's like the combination of ERLs and collegiate. and then if you win, you get to play in like the lock-in,
Yeah.
against the actual teams.
Yeah, it would be like that. If you win like a big amateur tournament, or if you win collegiate, you get to compete in the lock-in. Would be the format, right? That would be the reward.
Yep.
The QG, yeah. So originally the way it was is that TGA qualified you for LSPL and LSPL qualified you for LPL. So that was the method that QG used to get to LPL. Yes.
Yep.
That's how most teams ultimately made LPL. Snake, like
They
Team
won
King for a
LSPL, I
while.
think.
Yeah. King won LSPL, but it was the top two teams always qualified you for LPL.
Yep.
I think basically the format was very similar to LCS promotion in the past. So yes, but now TGA is more like a regional tournament. As far as I know, it doesn't qualify you directly to LDL anymore. Is there still promotion to LDL?
No, there isn't. Like
Okay.
LDL is closed. It's like a closed
Mm-hmm.
tournament.
Yeah.
It's like invite only, so
Yep.
you have to be an org inside.
Mm-hmm. So there are orgs within LDL that are not LPL orgs, but they're also like
Yeah.
kind of franchised LDL orgs in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. So that's the main. So those are kind of the three systems. Is that you have TGA, which is the regional tournaments, but the trade-off for the players who compete in TGA versus who might want to be in a youth team or a youth system for an LPL team is basically, I assume, the quality of coaching is going to be the selling factor, or the quality of attention that these players will receive, and the fact that
Yeah.
they're constantly being looked at by LPL teams makes it more likely that they go to LDL or can eventually compete in LPL, probably in their minds.
Yeah, but I mean,
Mm.
if you win like TGA, the LPL teams or the LDL teams will be looking at you anyways. So
Yeah. So you have to weigh that trade-off, right? Do I get more
yeah,
from competing with like probably lower quality of coaching, or
I mean,
and then therefore
of course, like I'll say like
Mhm.
99.9% you're gonna go to a LPL team anyway.
I assume most LPL coaches have different quality as that they look for. Like for example, most academy coaches that I've talked to have all sorts of different qualities that they look for specifically. But do you have any thoughts on just because what qualities that you look for in new players from scouting grounds?
I think just reaction time and
Hmm.
communication, because those are the two things which I cannot change,
Hmm.
which I wouldn't be able to like influence the players, like their own reaction time.
Yeah.
And yeah, like basically you cannot be hit by a Bard ultimate, if you have flash. It shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, then if it happens, then I just like go next, like go next player, because there's
Go
like
next
200,
one.
there's like 200.
Hmm.
Yeah, and communication, especially in the roles which are like anything except AD, you have to speak a lot, because you're not playing at a high level, so you have to speak a lot.
Yeah, I guess for me when I'm looking at like players in scouting grounds or at an amateur, I also only care about hands, like how you're visualizing the fights. I basically just skip through everything else, and then I'm looking at okay, reaction time, speed, and the center of the fight, like kind of how you're thinking about it, because theoretically how you're thinking about fights is one of the more coachable qualities. It is a coachable quality, but it also, if your baseline for it is just like not there at all, you're not thinking critically, then that's kind of a bad sign.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are
Yeah,
main things, and I do think to an extent communication is coachable, but yeah, I have to.
as in not exactly communication, but willingness to speak.
Oh, sure, willingness to
Yeah,
speak.
willingness to speak. Yeah,
Yeah, I do think some of that can be improved too, but yeah, I
but
understand.
it's not.
But
Yeah,
it's just like it's
but
not, especially in China, it's just not worth just because of the amount of players that will be at the scouting grounds, right? So if you have flaws in
yeah,
those areas, it's just like really quick elimination, go on to the next player.
yeah. I mean, unless you're like insane,
Hmm.
like individually.
Yeah,
Actually, there was one question I saw in the chat, which is like, who scouted Doinby?
yeah.
Uh, do you know who scouted Doinby?
I don't know who specifically scouted
Like,
them, I know that he was
from what I
a streamer for CJ Entis, and he was like part of their youth group, and youth training group, but I don't know who specifically scouted them. So
as far as I know, like it was Tabi who got a Doinby because
Okay.
Tabi was in QG as well
Mhm.
at that period of time. So
Interesting.
just like fun fact.
Fun fact: Tabe has credit for everything Doinby does for the rest of his career. Okay, that's how that works. Okay, but I think let's see other questions. The QG, yeah, he was on Swift's. Swift was also on QG or
Yeah,
CJ. Yeah,
we,
hmm
yeah,
yeah.
we don't talk about that.
Uh, okay. So that kind of gives you a more comprehensive picture. And then I also had someone ask, is there an a collegiate circuit in China? And yes, there's a very big one. Actually, the finals of the collegiate events, the international collegiate event is usually Maryville from NA versus the Chinese team, and the Chinese team always stomps them.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
always wins.
yeah, so that's generally speaking, I would say in terms of like seriousness of the circuit, probably China is the most serious, and then maybe NA, just because I think like collegiate isn't as big or as important or considered like as big of an investment in Europe. So
Yeah, I think collegiate, at least for Korea, it's not as good
mhm.
because the best Korean players are in teams anyways. So
Yeah, exactly. They don't
yeah, they have no
go
time.
to university. But I think also in China, just because there are so many players. Also that's the question. Like, do you guys do LPL teams typically scout from collegiate at all, or at that point are you too old?
I'm not really sure. I
Hmm.
don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, so mostly
Yeah.
collegiate in China then is probably just a way to compete while you're getting a degree, you know. So
Yeah, I guess because right now it's like basically if you want to join a youth team and in the LPL youth team, you need to be born in like 2002 or after. So
yeah,
can't you can't be a boomer. It's not allowed.
you can't be boomer. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not allowed.
Basically, it's like if you're 18, you're already too old. Move on, and no one has talked to you.
I mean, unless you have like high rating in Korea solo
hmm
queue, then it's different.
Yep. Server 1 and server 21. So a lot of it is the server stuff is locality, and Nelson can speak to this too. But
Yeah,
a lot of this,
I
okay.
think there's something which some people don't really know. Like some servers are known for different things.
hmm
Like like if I'm not wrong, there's a server called like Black Rose, and then that server is like where all the female streamers play on. So
Nice.
and then yeah, and then there's like Ionia where the best of like the rest it plays on Ionia, and most of them are like on Super server. Everything else doesn't really matter.
hmm Ionia was used to be the most important server before they introduced the super server, and even now
Yeah.
it's like if you want kind of a name or if you want people to notice you play Ionia. But otherwise, I think the other servers are mostly regional. I also know that there was used to be a lot of difficulties with Ionia because so many people wanted to play on Ionia because that's where the pros played. So they
Yeah,
tried to make accounts and there was like really long queue times even to log in. So yeah.
no, it's the same like for now because
hmm
back then I know like sometimes during my off days I try to go on get on Ionia to play TFT. The queue is like 40 minutes. So
Yep.
I pick time the queue is like insane.
Yep. Hmm. So I think that's so super server skill floor is higher than server 10. To get into the super server, you have to be D1 plus in any other server to apply.
Yeah, see,
And
super server skill floor is like the top of any solo queue. So around there, if you got the account like legitly.
mhm. Yeah, I'm sure there are certain people who get accounts for you, and like there's obviously a lot of issues in China with boosting and buying accounts. So yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that mostly covers most of it. Do you have anything else kind of to add about the the system in LPL for developing players?
Not really, but I think like one of the core differences is like the head coach of the LPL team, like he will be involved with the youth team, like during the off season stuff like that, because the that's just what like management requests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it happens in the West or
It
happens as often.
it usually kind of is up to the head coach. You know, if the head coach really cares about the development of the youth players, then he will
I mean,
interact with
I
them
mean,
more.
you
But
don't have a choice
management,
here. So.
yeah, but yeah. In LPL, you don't have a choice. Management, I would say, in a lot of times, management in NA has less of a concern for development. But I can't speak to every team because I haven't talked to every single team about this. So,
Yeah,
uh,
coaches.
it depends. It really depends. Because I would say that coaching in LPL in the past has been really fucking troll. So
I mean,
even while we're hyping up, we're talking about like good things about coaching. Most of the stuff that we're saying is like, okay, the difference between the head coach in terms of knowledge and coaching ability is should still be higher than the like youth gaming coach, right? So
yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah.
Because most of the coaches in like youth teams, academy teams, either they're like long-term coaches, so that they're in like the team
Mhm.
for a long time already, but they can't get promoted. Like from what I know, like IG's coach has been there for a long time, and I mean, you can't get promoted. Not easy to get promoted to the first team,
Mhm.
and then or the orgs, they use it to develop new coaches as well. So like retired players go start in LDL.
Okay. So would you say so I guess in answer to that person's questions, like why do people say coaches don't matter in OPL? Do you think?
I mean, I think coaching matters, but not in the way which like you guys think or the West think. If But of course, coaches matter in every team. I think like the only case where coaches don't matter is that number one, you have a player coach. Number two, the players are not affected emotionally, like they're not unstable emotionally. They can control their emotions. They're all like they can think rationally, but of course, that is not true. That is not true. Even if you're the best top team,
Mhm.
like to even reach to get the first condition, it's really hard to have a player coach, and there are only a few player coaches in LPL,
I think
and
the oh god.
yeah, and even then, like coaches all have their own. Most of the coaches, at least during pick and ban, they have like 100% authority. Most of them.
Most
Yeah.
but that the exception with the IG side. I think the so one of the reasons why I would say like coaching in the past, the perception of coaching in the past in LPL has been just most testimonials you heard from LPL players in like 2015, 2016, like those time periods where that the coaches, they don't do anything. They just are there for a paycheck, or they don't really understand the culture. Like since a lot of them they were just chosen because they were Korean and they were brought over, and they didn't really understand, like for example, the OMG case where they didn't understand how to resolve situations between the
I,
players.
I think that is. I think most coaches, they fall in one of the two situations, like
Mm-hmm.
one of the two stereotypes. So it's either you can they only know about the game, but they can't handle the players,
Mm-hmm.
or they can only handle players, but they know nothing about the game.
Yeah.
So that was the case, I think, most of the time in the past. And then teams started to use like two coach system where you have one of each. And of course, in like some coaches or most coaches right now, they are like in between. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how like the coaching scene kind of develop develop.
I would say it's the same pretty much everywhere. That it's just coaching in general is pretty underdeveloped in like League of Legends in general, just because it's still very new sport. So you don't have people who have a lot of experience coaching league yet. You're starting to get a lot more notable examples, people who have really extensive coaching resumes and can like they've just been in so many of these situations before, and every time you're in a situation as a coach and you handle it poorly, you know, okay, if something like this happens again, I'm definitely going to do this differently, right? So
because I can say like even if you are a pro player
Mhm.
or you were a pro player, you wouldn't be a good coach. It's not a guarantee for you to be a good coach. Even on even if you're just talking about game knowledge, because the game changes like
Mhm.
every year
Yep.
or every few months. Like I think right now, like how coaches improve is just basically they're just more experienced. Like I've seen this situation happen before in previous teams, so I know how to fix it. Or my players told me how to fix it 3 years ago, so I'll just use it right now because
Mhm.
the fundamentals of the games is still like similar or close to the same.
And
Which is why I think like if you like when you reach a certain level, it doesn't matter if you were a pro player before or
I've,
not. Yeah.
and I've interviewed a lot of ex-pros, right? Even on game knowledge, they might not know the same thing, so they might not know like everything. Or a lot of times, especially in NA, you have players who really super specialize in one role, so they have no idea. Like, let's say they're a mid main or a jungle main, they have no idea how to teach like a bot laner, right? They have no idea. So
Yep.
because their entire careers, maybe they relied on bot lane to give them information. So
Yeah, because you just have to learn. You just have
Mhm.
to learn all the roles.
Yeah. So like you can have successful players who go for a successful player to coach transition, but the entire time you always have to learn stuff. There's never going
Yeah.
to be a situation where you know everything about being a coach the first time you coach a team.
Yeah, because there are a lot of like micro details which
Yeah.
changes every few days, because the
Mhm.
matchup changes in Korea. Like the patch doesn't need to change, but the meta changes, and that's something which is not possible to get up to speed to because you don't play the game. Like you don't have time to play the game.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an interesting comment to make as well. Is that you don't have time to play the game as a coach? Because that's like kind of a controversial statement to make in the West right now. Is they're saying that if you don't have time to play the game, then you can't be a good coach. But
I mean, I'm Diamond 1 on Super Server, so probably better than most coaches in NA.
just from
But
skill, no.
yeah,
Um,
better better hands.
better hands, better coaching.
No,
Is that?
it's just I mean it's easier to understand if
Mhm.
you know play the game once in a while, but usually there is no time because we just scrim so much. So
Yeah.
because if you're not scrimming and the players are playing solo queue, so it's like 1 hour a day or like maybe 2 or 3 hours a day you're not scrimming. So you're either having a break, eating, or you're having a meeting, with the GM, because that always happens.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you just choose to watch your players play solo queue. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, or you're studying the game in some
yeah,
other way.
or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially in LPL, because dinner period is like when all the teams take a break,
Mhm.
and there's LPL every day. So usually you're watching the games and having dinner with the
And
team at the same
eating.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like everyone is like around the table, like BMing what's going on the screen.
Okay, so yeah, I was kind of expecting that we would go almost the full hour talking about this, actually. So, I think we should, but this topic transitions well into what you've been wanting to talk about for a bit. So we can just have this be the topic, and the next time we'll talk about the pro team landscape because we'll be the top team landscape because we'll be getting closer to the end of the regular season. So let's talk about the LMS coaches and this topic. Like they suddenly became very trendy, very popular within the last few years, I would say.
Yeah, I think because like basically the coaches are like Warhorse, Stake,
Mhm.
um, who else? Who's the guy?
Green tea.
Domo, like no Domo. Yeah, Green Tea as well. Green Tea as well. Green Tea as well. He was,
Mhm.
or he is as well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all of them they have the same. They come from the same background. As in,
Mhm.
when they were in LMS, they were the kings. Like they were the ones who called the shots on the team, because
Yeah.
that's just how the LMS teams work, or at least how the players work, because the players are more obedient there. Most of them, they're just more obedient there. So
There's also Chashao Refrain, who was an ex-LMS
yeah, oh
player.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Chashao, Refrain as well, but I mean Refrain is like assistant coach.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then Chashao is the same. He was from Flash Wolves as well. So basically, they all of them, they handled the same, I would say, like same type of players or similar
Hmm.
type of players, where basically the coaches get their way. But of course, they are also open to like discussions with players. But
Hmm.
basically, they want like absolute control, absolute like discipline from their teams. And it just happened that most of the teams, when the Taiwanese coaches started to go over, the management of the teams were from LMS as well. So RNG. Right now it's like TS,
Yeah.
FEX. Like they have certain parts of like the LMS management in there as well. And of course, then the other teams, they start to copy the same style. And if the teams or the players like fit your style, the coach's style, then of course it's gonna work. Because even if like the coaches are bad, which I'm not sure because I didn't work with them.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm close to all of them, but I didn't work with them. But if the teams like agree to that style, and then obviously you are gonna play more or you're gonna practice more than the other teams anyway.
So you're saying that they tend to come into coaching with like a clear idea of the style of how the team is going to play, or do you just mean the style of coaching?
Or as in like the demands they have from players, like
Okay. Hmm.
you have to play like 10 games or so a day or something like that, or you have to play a game before any match. You have to warm up with
Yeah.
a solo queue game before any match. Like you don't have an option, you don't have a choice. If you don't do it, you get deducted like your salary.
Hmm. Yeah. Fining is also a way more common punishment, I would say, in
Yeah.
LPL than it is in NA. I think for NA or EU, because I think like there were definitely some players that I've seen in the past who they just pay whatever the fine is, depending on what it is, because it's just like they don't care. But it's more about you have to believe that the thing that you're being told to do will make you better, and that means like you either believe in your coach or you believe in the thing itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's more it than just the fine. Like you have no other option, but you also kind of have to believe that that's going to make you better. It's going to make practice more efficient. And I think things like playing a game of solo queue as a warm up or like any kind of warm up in general. I've had teams where I have my players play
Yeah.
ARAM before. It's just going to make practice more efficient because they're just like warming up their hands. They're not doing troll shits where they're not thinking about the game.
Or
Um,
as in before a match, because I know
Oh, before match, yeah. Before
there are many teams
practice,
who don't play like before the match.
yeah. Before match, I think is also really important to have some kind of warm up. Like that's really obvious to me. Before practice, I think it's important too. Just because otherwise, you guys like they just int the first game, so it's like what the fuck. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
there's nothing to get out of this practice unless because you wouldn't play like this if you had warmed up.
yeah. It's more important for games.
Yeah. Obviously, it's more important for games. So
Yeah, for scrims it's not as important, so it's fine.
Firefox was not an LMS coach, but he was part
He
of
yeah of
the I forget what it was called, but
T
it was
the TESL.
yeah,
TESL.
TESL. Oh, right, the TESPA.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
and then he went to China
LGD.
before. Yeah, he went to LGD before like before the Taiwanese team started to play in GPL. So
Hmm.
so that was a long time,
Yeah.
like 7 years ago.
Yeah. And he was the first I guess LMS region coach, you could say.
I'm not sure,
Not sure.
because there are so
It
many.
was
Yeah,
it was
I'm not sure.
either like him or Tabe who were the first like.
Yeah, there's a lot there,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of players who
Hmm.
you were like you might not know, or what's his name, like there's this guy called like Buping, so in Chinese like Puping. He was one
Yeah.
of the players on like energy peacemaker as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there as a coach for a long time as well. Right now he's in a different game.
I remember it was a big deal though because he was the first head coach for an LPL team from the LMS region, if I remember correctly. So that was kind of a thing because I remember reading a lot of comments about that. Not all of them were great, but I think he did like he went from LGD and then he went to RG, so yeah.
I think he was on EDG for a while.
Yeah, he was also on EDG for a little bit too, like where he learned theoretically, like I heard from him, he actually learned from being there.
Kesman.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in there, Kesman.
Yeah, I know all of them pretty well.
Kesman has a really interesting reputation too, but that's
not for something.
That's
not something you talk about on camera.
Oh, I think I screwed up. There we go. We're good now. But yeah, I think the main thing for me when we're talking about the Flashworks coaches is just like it's one of those things where at first it becomes okay, like this guy is having an impact or our team is winning and there's good feedback, so then it becomes popular to bring them in. Also, obviously, they have friends, they have managers that will advocate for them. So it's hard to know like right away if those coaches are going to be good. But right now, I feel like the perception in LPL is like, oh, he's an LMS coach, he must be good,
I mean it depends. It depends who your management is, because there are some coaches which they don't really think. I mean, some of the coaches where the players don't really think like the LMS coaches are good, but it depends,
Yep.
And most of the time, it's like the management who will bring the coaches in, and the owners of the orgs are gonna listen to them, because basically all of I would say every LMS GM who went over to LPL, they have success at least in the other games, like every other game except League of Legends, they're always first place, always top 5, stuff like that. And there are many games in China, and because of that, they kind of have a bit of leeway with the League of Legends team because, of course, it's the most competitive game, so you can't always win.
So, you mean you can't? So they get like a little grace period if they don't necessarily do well? Is that what you're saying as coaches? Or
yeah, as in as like the GMs.
Oh, okay.
And
the GMs,
coaches as well.
Obviously, yeah.
And the GMs will vouch for the coaches. Yeah.
So it's not. It's a little bit like it's definitely networking based. I would say it's similar to other regions where it's very networking based in terms of like who you know, what your reputation is.
I mean, it is networking based if you want to get a job as a head coach without having a trial. But to join the teams like as academy coach or assistant coach, they will always like bring you over for a trial to see whether you're like worth having, because that's how I got into LPL in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah, they just flew me over for a trial.
So yeah, I think that's not also uncommon, though flying the coach over is less common. I think it's really important though for the coach to be in the room for the players to get a good sense of how well they're able to coach. I think online coaching is generally a big way that coaches get trialed, especially during COVID for LCS. But even before that, yeah.
I mean, like, this period is like different, so
yeah. But before,
you can't really say anything about it. But before, you always had offline trials for coaches because there's no way you do anything online. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But definitely, I think that's way less common in NA or LEC.
Yeah, I mean, because they just don't have enough money for it,
I don't think it's that they don't have enough money for it, as much as.
I mean, they just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. I think that's it's more accurate because they're definitely different priorities. I think. Then.
Because I mean, like for us, I mean, we were prepared to, fly like 20 coaches over for trials, and you can be from anywhere in the world as long as you're good. So stuff like that,
Mhm.
like
Makes
that's the
sense.
budget which LPL teams have. Doesn't matter where you're from as long as you're good.
What Nelson is saying, LMS, we are OP, hire us, China, kick W. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's not what I meant.
I know.
I mean, there are some LMS coaches who are bad and are in the LPL.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna say who, but I mean they're bad in terms of game knowledge. But like the way they handle players,
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's the right way. So sometimes that's all you need, because maybe you have a player which is good enough to coach all 5 roles as well at the same time, because they exist in China. Maybe not in any.
Sometimes I guess it kind of depends on the
Oh,
player
I mean,
or what what
I
what what level you want, you know.
yeah,
But yeah.
I meant I forgot to add the word like good player coach.
Oh wow, you're just BMing North America left and right now. But that is like a fair point that you're bringing up too, though, is that I think if you're in a region like NA where the baseline knowledge of the players it tends to be lower, you have more demands on the coach to teach them those things. So game
Yeah, but at the
knowledge
same,
might become more
yeah,
important. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. Because like I mean those players they exist, because I mean I worked with Tarzan for a few months, and then
Mhm.
basically he was able to tell the support and mid laner like exactly what they have to do on which wave and how to manage their waves. Like he is able to do that.
Also depending on like I'm assuming you meant like matchup based, so that he could find timing as jungle too, or was it just in general for the matchup?
Yeah, just in general,
Mhm.
because I mean
He's
matchups are.
also he's also a player who's like played multiple roles on Korean server too, right? As far as I know. Um,
Not sure, because every time I watch him play solo queue, he just doesn't win
he
if
just
he's not playing
plays.
jungle. So, but I
Okay,
mean,
okay, sure.
probably not his fault,
Mhm.
because he likes to duo. He likes to duo in the past,
Yeah.
like Smurf duo, stuff like that.
Ah, okay. So you're saying he's boosted. Got it. Understood.
you know, it's more like his teammates troll him. So.
Yeah. Okay. I think that anything else on the topic of LMS coaches?
Mm,
Are there any ones that you know? So you don't want to out the ones that you know are bad, right? But are there any ones that you know are like insanely smurf good coaches that you've worked with?
I mean, I spoke a lot with like Warhorse. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I worked with Steak. I worked with Steak. And we're all like really close with the Flash Wolf coaches. So it's like Refrain, Warhorse. Is there anymore? I mean, like the coach in RNG, Tabe and Poppy, because Poppy was my assistant coach
Mm-hmm.
in LMS. Yeah, so I mean they should be able to. They are all like decent as coaches, I'd say. I mean, I wouldn't say like any of them are like out, outstanding in terms of game knowledge. They're decent, but maybe their man management is different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could be like really good with management, because I know some of them are, but that's not something I can judge, because they don't manage me, like that's not their job.
Don't manage me.
So
If they managed you, maybe you would clean your room, you know? Like, I think the
oh, yeah, I
um
mean, like the best coach I've seen so far is like the coach of EDG. So the
mhm.
the current head coach, like Zhu Kai,
Zhu
yeah,
Kai?
he
Okay.
who was the best I've seen in terms of game knowledge.
Okay. In terms of game knowledge. So Maokai
Yeah,
or Kenju or
Kenju.
Kenju, okay. Zhu Kai.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, okay,
yeah.
okay. I've heard
Oh,
of this guy actually. Zhu
yeah,
Kai? Yeah.
yeah,
He was on IG very briefly, and then he was in Snake for ages. I remember actually.
yep,
I remember this guy because this was like whenever Snake would lose games, and I forget what it
yeah,
was. It was like 2015 or something. He would just
yeah.
be
I
like
know, I know.
fucking losing his shit, and
Yeah,
yeah, I always used to take like gifs of this guy and put them on Twitter. Yeah, but that does
and,
I didn't
and,
I couldn't tell like if he was saying good things. So it's good that he was also saying good things generally.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was the best I've seen so far.
Good to know.
But I mean, yeah, or like the best I've seen so far, or I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of coaches around the world. So
All right. That's pretty much it for today. I think next time we'll talk a little bit more about the LPL teams. Thanks for everyone coming out. We'll leave a little bit of time if there are extra questions from chat. So
yeah,
feel free to get those out about pretty much anything LPL related or NA related. Hello, Smacks. How you doing?
oh, there was something with his trial. Yeah, I think my trial with LNG was like 3 weeks. So the first 2 weeks I had to coach the academy team. So basically, the GM just told me that I can do anything I want with the team. I can just force them not to sleep or whatever. So basically, I have full control of the academy team. I have full control of the academy team. I mean, just joking about the previous part. And then, of course, the coaches, the current academy coaches would like judge me. I mean, like review or like review how I did. The GM would as well, and the players would give feedback to the GM as well. And then they would fly me over to the first team to have a trial there as well, where the head coach would see if I was like suitable to join. So it was pretty long period, like 3-week trial.
3-week trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely more intense than coaching trials that I've had or that people I've heard from before. So
yeah, I mean, it just happened that during that period it was in the middle of the season. In the middle of the season, yeah.
That makes sense. Because it's kind of hard to like if it's in off season, it's kind of hard to trial a coach for that extensive amount of time.
No, you can as well. You can trial them for like.
It
You can
depends on
trial
if
them
you
with
can.
your academy team.
Yeah, with the academy team, it depends on if you have scripts. You know, that's the
Scrims,
other
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that there's always scrims. There's
Scrims
not a
like
day where.
there's no break, right? As much
Yeah,
for.
except for Chinese New Year, there are no days without any scrims.
So there aren't even days off.
I mean, like, at least there'll be a few teams scrimming every day. That's what I meant.
Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, days off is like a few times during the season. It's like a few times. I mean, once every few weeks, so maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, I saw
1.5 weeks.
you.
That's 1 day off. Yeah.
I saw you. Oh yeah, I saw you comment once that you're doing like basically you have so few technically scrim days, but you take like you will skip a week with a day off and so that you can get more scrims in. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
we always wanted to have a system where we have at least 2 days of scrims before a match. So. And back then it was even worse, like when there was no COVID, because you have to take a day to fly there. So
yeah, you have to take a day to fly. So and then also the schedule is really weird. Like we've had teams that compete one day and then there's a break, and then they compete again the next, based on how the schedule is done. So
yeah, basically it's like you have that like 3 to 4 times a split. Every team has that 3 to 4 times a split. And those were like the toughest, because maybe you have to fly to Beijing and the next day you have to fly to somewhere else, and you have almost no time to scrim or half a day to scrim.
I remember when the system was introduced, initially I said that, it's definitely, I thought that it could potentially hurt like LPL performance internationally, just because you are cutting down on the amount of practice you get.
What they did, they just cut down on the breaks.
Yeah, okay. That's the compensation. I do think that, so we can talk about this maybe another episode, but I do think that there are ways that you can make practice efficient and still get breaks in, but yeah, that's maybe for...
What do you mean? Like,
for another time. Oh, I mean, like, do you guys experiment with practice formats at all? Do you...
Depends,
or do you still just do like the game, the 3 games, break 3 games, typically? And then
Yeah,
maybe
I
an
mean,
extra block after dinner or something like that.
yeah, like sometimes in the past, we used to do like 10-minute scrims with our academy team. So we just play the first 10 minutes. So we just play the first 10 minutes and then we just reset again, first 10 minutes, and then next game.
Makes sense. Okay. But yeah, I think that there are ways people like the way people are approaching scrims is in some ways like very formulaic. So I think that there can be more done to tweak quality of practice, and maybe this is something we talk about in another episode because I think we should kind
Yeah,
of wind down. But
I think we can talk about it like really quickly. I think the difference in scrims in NA and NAU and the Asia, because the difference is like in NAU you're just trying to master like the fundamentals,
yeah,
you're trying to perfect your fundamentals, and in Asia is just how to min max the fundamentals and how to figure the counter play, and then soon the meta changes into like how you corner the counter play, stuff like that. Basically, how can you
it still
whether you can
depends.
find the next cheese,
It depends on the level of the team too. I think
Yeah,
like
of course.
yeah. In an A, they're like for example, if the players don't know what the fundamentals look like, they can't necessarily work on mastering them. So they'll still be looking for ways to like min max certain aspects, and they'll be like clear goal oriented practice. Like that's what I always think. It's like no matter the practice session, you should have a goal. And there are still so many teams that don't like have goals for the day or don't have things that they're working
Yeah.
on or drafting towards as a general plan for the day, which is kind of crazy to me.
I mean, like, and of course, like when I say fundamentals, it means like how to set up for dragon and
Yeah.
how to path, how to play the team fight. That's what I meant by fundamentals. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like
but again, like, yeah, but what I'm saying also is like, there are definitely teams that don't know that they're screwing up on those points, so they're not necessarily saying that our goal is to fix this today, you know? Like there are definitely teams that just don't get the mistakes that they're making, so they can't practice to correct them. So they might be say like practicing something else very specific to try to refine it. Um, if that makes sense. So like, it's not like it's kind of it's an interesting point to make too because it's like a lot of not every NA team knows that the way that they're setting this up is bad. And they don't necessarily have guidance from coaches all the time to know that how they're setting up in this scenario is bad. So
yeah, and
yeah.
none of them know. So
Yeah. So like they can't practice to improve that if they don't know what the correct way is. Right. So yeah. That's more what I meant. I think
yeah.
But yeah. Thanks for coming out. We'll be putting the episode up on YouTube in shortly after. I probably will not do very much edits to that, so it can go up pretty quickly. And if anyone has any questions, or we'll try to do this like the same time every week, just so that works out. And then if you didn't catch it this time and you can next time, or you have a question specifically about LPL teams or anything like that, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.